Ever experienced adversity in your life? Felt like nothing is going to work now, and you felt like maybe giving up, but you didn't. You are not alone. Welcome to Coaches on the Couch, the place where experts share their journey and inspire you to take action. My name is Pratishtha, and I'll be your host for the show. Today we have with us Randy Brown, from losing two of his four daughters, serving the federal prison for 2 years, losing his career as a basketball coach forever, to writing an international bestseller, and working now, today, as a successful speaker, mentor, and networking coach. His story of rebound forward is sure to inspire you. So make sure you stay with us till the end and subscribe to this channel. If you are watching it on YouTube, make sure you hit the bell icon so that you don't miss the updates, because every week we are bringing in experts who can share their journey with you. A very warm welcome, Randy, to Coaches on the Couch.
Well, thank you so much for having me, first of all, on your podcast with you. I really appreciate that. Anytime I get an opportunity to share stories that can help people, I would do it every day, all day if I could. So I always relish the opportunity to do so. So thank you so much for that, and for that nice introduction too. I really appreciate it. It's it's really good to be here, especially when I know that we're talking across the globe, which is really neat. I think it's awesome, and your listenership and your clients and the people who are going to catch this on YouTube um, are not people that I normally would be able to reach. And so I think that's the beauty of two people getting together and collaborating like we're doing here. And it gives, it'll also give my people that are in, here in the States, it'll give you, the same kind of experience, that same kind of exposure where normally you wouldn't be able to reach them. So it's pretty amazing, pretty amazing. I live in Iowa. Iowa's in the middle of in the Midwest in the United States. We have four seasons. I don't really like one of them, and that's winter. And so I go south where it's warm. But we it's a great place, and I grew up here, and I'm currently living here. And my life is really one thing I know as I write books, and as I speak, and as I meet people and talk to them, is so much of our lives. And I don't think we're taught this maybe as much when we're younger as we should. So much of our life is based on the choices that we make. If we make good choices, there's probably a pretty positive end to the choice we make. If we don't make a wise choice, there are what's called consequences. And you tell that to kids growing up, and they're like, they don't really get it. When you get older, you get it. And for me, a consequence of my poor decisions was, like you mentioned, I ended up having to do a 2-year stint in federal prison. And that's not something I had planned on. And it was really rough. But boy, life is choice. It is amazing. So one of the things, and I want to say this at the beginning, one of the things I want to make sure that I am very clear to get across to the people listening to our program is that I really don't care what happens to. I don't want to sound insensitive. It isn't what happens to us in our life. It's what we decide to do with it, and how we decide to respond to it. there are a lot of really tough things, bad things that happen every day in this world. And we experience a death of two 4-year old children. And I didn't expect that either. That was not in the plan of the way my life was supposed to go. But when it does, and I know everybody listening can probably think of something where they just didn't think that they could get out of it. They didn't think they could come back. They didn't think they had the strength to remove themselves from that pain. But I'm here to tell you, if I tell you anything, I'm here to tell you that you can, because everything that happens to us also gifts us with the opportunity to respond. So it isn't like something bad happens to us in the world and the rest of our life is bad for the rest of our life. It doesn't work that way. Now, bad things happen, whether the world creates them or whether our choices create them, but we still have a choice. So when I went to prison, and I'm getting ahead of myself, but it's for a reason. I remember that one of the people in charge said to me that in the 2 years that I was going to be in prison, I had a choice. Again, there's that word. He said, in the time that you're here for 2 years, you can learn while you're here to be a better criminal. And first of all, I'm like, what? Did you call me a criminal? Whoa, I'm like, whoa, this is this is a crazy place now. This isn't normal life. Prison is a crazy place. He said, or you can decide and choose to be a better person. And I said, that's what I want. I want to become a better person. How do I do that? And fortunately for me, I was sent to a prison in North Carolina over in the eastern part of the United States that had a very specific treatment program for, and we'll get into the details of what led me to prison, but had a special treatment program that I could use to work on myself, to work on the way I thought, to work on the way I monitored my emotions, um, to work on making choices, to work on valuing all people, not just people that were like me or people that I, wanted to say that's a good person. And the whole thing about judgment. And they help me in so many ways that this is one of the real gifts of my life, that in the deepest, darkest times in my life, and nothing can compare to losing your children. There's not enough prison, or there's not. I mean, I don't even want to make that comparison, because it's not. There's nothing like the darkness that you can fall into after losing your children. But even in that, I knew that life was going to make a turn, and if I decided that I was going to not give up, if I just decided to say there is hope, there is always hope. I don't care how dark it is. I don't care how much we hurt. I don't care how much we've maybe hurt other people, and the consequences of those actions and the darkness that you can come surrounded by. There is never a time where there's no hope. Hope doesn't run away. It's always there, but we have to ask for it. We have to access it. We have to find out ways and it could be through your faith, and it could be through friendships and relationships, and it could be from reading really good books. It could be from listening to a podcast. And that's really my ministry, is to tell these stories and to tell people there's always hope, because after they hear my story, they're like, wow, for what that guy's been through, if he still found hope, I can find hope. And that's what I really want to land with the people get an opportunity, to view and listen to our podcast. So uh, I'm a I'm a speaker, I'm an author, and I'm a coach. And it's my goal to share my experiences with others, to give them hope, because there is. So that's kind of a real long self introduction, but that'll at least give people an idea of where we're going with our conversation here today.
Sure, and I know there is a lot to cover that we will go and we'll discover what happened actually when you said you lost your daughter, you went to the prison. I think a lot of things, a lot of stories are there. So please, Randy, could you share what happened to your daughters? You said you lost two of your daughters,
Mm-hmm.
and what was that period like when you had that great loss?
The period before it happened the first time, or we lost our first child, the period before that was nothing short of miraculous. It was just awesome. And it starts with the family that I grew up in. My parents were awesome, and I was raised the right way, to know right from wrong, to do right from wrong. And again, we as humans have self will. We have the opportunity to choose how we want our life to go. Now we can make good choices and we can make poor choices, and I'll get into how I made both, but especially the poor choices. And so my life was really rolling. I was riding, like we say, riding a good wave. And a lot of that was, it was kind of sort of because of my family. Again, the family I grew up in. My wife, the person I married, is one wonderful person. We're no longer married at this point, unfortunately, but we had a 32-year marriage, and it was, for a great portion of it, it was awesome. She's such a good, just under unbelievably upbeat and hopeful person. And and then our kids, starting to have a family, and then even our extended family, her family and my family, and we grew up in the same hometown, so they all knew each other, and it was just awesome. It was a great way to start, a marriage and start a career. And so what I did for a career was, I'm a basketball coach. And I'm no longer actually a basketball coach, but I was, when I was young, in my 20s, when I got out of college. That's what I went to school for, is to become a teacher and a coach. And I did it at the high school level. I was a teacher and a coach at the high school level. But what I really wanted to do is to become a college basketball coach, where you can walk into those big giant arenas, and with all the games on national television, and it's a big deal. And basketball is a hugely popular sport in the United States, of course. And I wanted to be part of that. And fortunately, I got the opportunity to do that. So before we had children, my wife and I took off and went from Iowa to Arizona, and we started what would become a 20-year career that I would have in coaching college basketball. And we were in one, two, three different jobs at three different locations until we moved to Ohio. And in Ohio, we had another terrific experience with a really good school and really good people. And one day I left for practice, and we had our oldest daughter, Meredith, who was 4 years old. It was the day after her fourth birthday. And her little sister, who was about one, Claire, our second oldest. And I was at our basketball practice that day, and someone came to the floor to get me, a security guard, which I thought was very odd in the middle of our practice. And what had gone on at home was my daughter, she had some flu-like symptoms, like a flu was coming on with cold and cough and things, but no more than that. And she, in a hurry, got sick to the point where she couldn't really communicate with my wife to tell her even hardly what was wrong. So something inside her had taken over her body physically. And so I'm at our practice, and they rushed me in this car up to the hospital. And unfortunately, by the time I got there, she had already passed, and I wasn't able to talk to her one last time. And I got to tell you that in that moment, for us, for me personally, and for my wife and I, for our family, life was never going to be the same. Not to say that it was going to be bad for the rest of our life, but it was just different. When
Absolutely.
you lose a child, this is something that nobody expects to happen, right? So you're not prepared for it, and it comes out of the blue, and it knocks you over like a, oh, I can't, it's hard to even put into words. And in shock, you just stand there and try to understand what's happened, and to see your child who has died, and a funeral, and all that goes with it is really, whew, it's like it's not even happening. It's more like a dream than reality. And uh, we were we wanted to know the cause of her death, and they actually misdiagnosed it. They didn't even, the coroner didn't even know, because we learned later it was a very rare disease that she had. And of course, we didn't know that, and we did everything that we knew to try to save her, and we couldn't. And unfortunately, she wasn't the last one that had the same disease. So I can't really tell you a lot about what it was, because we really don't even know. Not even this many years later. We just know that it happened, and we did the best that we could, and it wasn't good enough. So
I understand, Andy, because we fall in love with the children even before they are born. The moment you conceive the child, you are already a parent. I think that is a different kind of love. And losing the child, I think it can be the most heartbreaking experience. And given this time of COVID, also, a lot of people have lost their loved ones. And
right,
they have got into, when I'm talking to people, I realize that there is a pain of losing their loved one. Sometimes it's their parents, sometimes it's their children or their spouse. And there is a pain that they're carrying with them. So you mentioned that that was not the only time. I think when you were discussing, you told your third daughter she also fell ill. So was it the same disease she fell ill for, and you mentioned that you lost her as well?
yeah, it just gets really kind of confusing, to be honest with you, because our second daughter, who, like I mentioned, was only one, um, about 3 years later, she got sick, and we knew what was up. We were hoping she just had the flu, but we were thinking, no, we know that if we even think remotely a little bit that they might be sick, we have to get them to the emergency room. And we did with our second oldest daughter, Claire. And she was actually hospitalized 3 different times. And she kept bouncing back, and she kept bouncing back. But the third time she was in the hospital, it was It was rough. It was very serious. And I actually thought we were going to lose her. And she made it. She found a way to make it through. And oh boy, that was just amazing. And it really kind of destroyed her, the muscularly, it sort of destroyed her, which the disease does. And we took her home finally, and we taught her how to scratch her nose again, a 4-year old, because she just didn't have the ability. She didn't have the strength, or her muscles didn't work properly, such that she couldn't even. So that was like a big deal. We celebrated when she could when she could scratch her nose. And slowly we had to teach her how to stand, how to take a step, just like a new, like just like a 1-year old would. And we had to teach her how to, all her motor skills. We had to help her, um, teach her how to have those come back. And that was pretty sobering. That was tough, but she learned to do it, and she made it. So she was afflicted by the same disease as her older sister who didn't make it. And as you can imagine, kids deserve to be outside. They deserve to be running around. They deserve to have their nose run. All that stuff, right? I mean, because you can't coddle them and protect them. You got to let them be kids. But at the same time, when our kids' noses are running, the first thing you think about, and it always would, just like I could feel it in my heart. I'm like, oh my gosh, do we get her to the hospital? You just never knew, you know? And with her, she never had that disease again. It was all around the age of 4. Because I'm going to take you 3 years, a little bit after this now, after she made it, and her younger sister, Natalie, um, caught the disease, got it again. She got it now, her sister, her younger sister. And I was at home that day, and I saw that she didn't look good in her eyes. Her eyes didn't look good. And I immediately called 911 and got her into the emergency room. And oh, it wasn't going very good. And they really didn't have the doctors and the expertise to help her. And so they put her in a helicopter and life flighted her to about 2 hours away to another hospital. And we're not able to go in the helicopter, so someone had to drive us. And unfortunately, by the time we got to that hospital, the doctors were trying everything they could to try to save her. And she didn't make it. So at this point, if I was ever going to lose hope in my life, ever, it would have been that day. I never truly lost hope, but I got pretty close. I got pretty close. There were too many things I couldn't explain, and didn't make sense to me. When we have things happen to us, it's we automatically ask that question, why? I want to know why my child died. I remember screaming that to the doctors, just hysterical almost, because I want to know. My child died. I deserve an answer. I want to know. And in life, we've learned that sometimes you can ask questions that there are no answers to. Nobody has the answer. And that's a hard thing for somebody to say, well, we really don't know why. Mr. and Mrs. Brown, I'm sorry. We did everything we could. We really don't know why your kids have this disease. And I remember telling a doctor one time, because you're just not rational in a lot of things you say. And I remember saying, hey, you know what? That's not good enough. It's not good enough. It's just not. And I think this is that period of time where we see a lot of people in our world give up. And I guess rightly so. We're all different. We're all made different. You're different than me. You make decisions different than me. I can tell in just the small period of time we've talked that 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 you feel like hope will always be there for you. And I felt that too. Unfortunately, some people don't. And they think that because this thing happened, and then this thing happened, and then this thing happened, that if they had any hope in their life, none of that would have happened. But that's not true. We've always got to hope and hang on to hope for a better day tomorrow. Not a better life, just a better day tomorrow. Or maybe people in addiction, maybe for an hour, maybe the next hour, maybe the next minute, maybe the next second. So I'm a recovering alcoholic because one of the things I did in all of this pain around losing our children is I accessed alcohol, and I did it frequently, and I drank a lot because it would help my mind and my body go to a place where I almost temporarily forgot about the pain. So that became a good place for me to go. Not a healthy place, certainly not. But I was looking, one of my choices was I want to comfort myself. I want to feel numb. I don't want to feel the pain. I don't want it anymore. Um, and I didn't take the healthy, there's a healthy way to grieve. But boy, addiction's tough. It's just, and I know you deal with it with your your clients and some of the people you work with. And addiction can be so hard. But I just want to say again that even in this time where I wanted to give up, I really thought about giving up, and I wondered maybe I'd be better off being in heaven too with my girls. I actually considered that. I mean, I thought about it at least, and I knew that wasn't the right thing to do because we still had two kids at home, beautiful children, and boy, I'll tell you what, you just love your kids unconditionally anyway. But when you lose two of your children and you look at the ones that you have at home, there is no level of love like that. I don't even know what the word is for it. You just do because they're there for you. They mean, they probably mean more than they would if all of your kids were there. I don't know, but I wasn't going to give up hope. I wasn't going to do it. So I can tell you're getting ready
Is that a
to give me a pause.
way? No, I was just curious when you were saying about you had two children at your home, and I was constantly thinking that so many times when we lose something, our focus is what we lost rather than what we have. And as you mentioned about the kids you had at home, was there more fear that nothing should happen to them, and did it impacted your parenting in any way?
It had to have an impact just because you walk on eggshells a little bit because you just never know. I mean, kids get sick every day and kids get well by the end of 24 hours. That's just the way kids are. They're just like made of rubber. I mean, they just bounce back like crazy, right? But not to say, that was never the case with our kids. Now, ironically, our fourth daughter, Jane, never got this disease. And when she grew up, when she was 2 and 3 and 4, she would get flu-like symptoms, colds and things, but she never got this disease. But the other three did. It was really weird, but it certainly didn't, cause you to love them any less than all you were capable of. But yet you always had an extra eye on them.
Mm.
It was that part was tough. Um, and I don't think they were young enough where I don't think they knew that. Now they knew that they had daughter or that they had sisters and the sisters were gone, which is something you got to talk to them about as they get older, which we did. But you just got to love them. You got to love them where they are during in that day, in that minute, in that hour, and you just live your life in the moment and as the best you can. That's really how I. That's really the only way I can answer that question.
Absolutely. Randy, when you mentioned about, I asked myself the question why it happened to me, and then you told about a story of getting into alcohol. Uh, did you seek help at that time?
I did, but honestly, it was just to put a band-aid on it. I was not serious about stopping my use of alcohol. It became too much of a friend, which is what addictions do.
Mm,
They're because they made my life better. At least I thought. At least in the short term, they did. In the long term, they didn't because it's not. It's. I mean, alcohol is really damaging. Can really be damaging, especially if it's used in excess. So I'm sure I had it because I had a therapist at the time that I started to see, and yeah, but I wasn't real honest with him about probably how much I was using alcohol. It's too much of a friend. I didn't want to give it up, so I didn't. The other thing I did is, and this was a selfish act of mine, is I would go in the office and I would work during the day. And sometimes then I would come home at dinner instead of staying home for the rest of the night. I would go back to the office and work long hours till past midnight. And there were two things there. There was my love for my job and the fact that I wanted to do a good job, but there was also the idea that if I did go back and stay till midnight, by the time I got home, I'd be so tired I would fall asleep, get up, and do it all over the next day. And just I didn't have those moments of clarity are tough because that's when you can really grieve the most, and that's when it can really just come down on you like the ceiling, and you can almost be buried by that grief. And so as you can tell, I mean, I just came up with ways to avoid that, and avoidance is not the answer. Sometimes it's the best we got. And for me, that was what I thought was the best thing for me to do. But and lean on our faith. That was the other thing that I haven't mentioned a whole lot, but that was always there. But I will tell you this, and my wife not so much, but and we grieved really differently. I spent a pretty good share of time really angry at God. The God that I know, the God that I was raised to love, didn't seem to be the same God that was taking our kids away. And I just couldn't. It wasn't as easy as I just couldn't make sense of it. And that's why, or I would ask that question, why, and didn't get an answer. And then I'd get more angry and I'd say, I deserve an answer. And, this is years it went on until I had one of the most pivotal conversations I've ever had with another person in my life. My good friend and our senior pastor at our church, David Staff. And I went to David after Natalie died and I said, David, I can't do this anymore. I'm not that strong. I'm not that resilient. I go, there's days I don't even want to live. It just doesn't seem like it's worth it. And I said, why has this happened? And why can God, for all the things God has, will, and currently doing for the world and myself and everybody, why has this gone on? And that's when he told me, and this I'm telling you, it was like I could just feel I could just feel my body relax. He said, we were not meant to know the answer to every question here on earth. I said, really? Why? See, I said why to why, right? And he caught me and he made me laugh. I'll never forget that because I was not in a laughing mood that day. I was angry and he made me laugh. He goes, see, you asked again. He said, we are not, he goes, at some point we will. He goes, our religion is one that teaches us that we will get answers because we're going to have that moment of being judged by the Lord, and then He's going to talk to us about things that happened in our life. And He says, "You're going to find out," and that meant everything to me because I thought I was stuck in a world where I would never have the answer, and so that was big. That was really big to me, and it really helped me. I became I started to love the Lord again instead of be so angry at him because I put all the blame on God. But it just helped me not fight against myself for something that I didn't even have. I couldn't even get an answer anyway. So why, you know, and we get so anxious and we get so angry and we get so depressed. These are all ramifications of not being able to deal with things properly. And I became very, very depressed. And that was tough. And I would have days where I couldn't get out of bed. And um and I actually still deal with it, to be honest with you, at times. And it really all kind of is about how we deal with our thoughts and our emotions. Um, but but it wasn't the end for me because I still had another vice that I found that we talked about a little bit ago, and that was coming, and that was only going to make things worse.
But before we talk about that, Randy, you just showed the power of some kind words from another human being that actually changed your perspective. So many times we are not kind to people, we judge them, we think why they are doing it that way. But the conversation that you just mentioned showed the power of you being nice to someone.
Right, right.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And now we can actually move on to the story where you went to the jail. So what had happened? Because that destroyed your career in a way, like we were talking and you should share.
Yeah. So, in my effort to, we were really in survival mode, which we called it. My
Hmm.
wife and I would actively call it that, you know, just because we've got our two kids and we're just watching them like crazy. We're both working full time. We're just, trying to protect our family and and at the same time, it was hard. It was just hard. And so I had a computer at home, and this is around the time that our second daughter, Natalie, passed away. And I was very disconnected to my life because I wasn't working that year. I was disconnected to my identity and who I was. As a man, we're supposed to protect our family, and it really bothered me that I couldn't protect my kids, and it bothered me that from an identity standpoint that I was no longer this coach that had this job. that I loved, and I was and I wasn't making a salary, and all these things added up, and I just was so disconnected to my wife, and would be as I would fake it if I had to with my kids to put a smile on my face. But with a computer at home and not working, I started to spend a lot of time on that computer. And I found another thing like alcohol and working more hours that was going to remove me from the pain, and that was pornography. Now, if I've ever made a decision in my life which was going to further complicate things, it was this decision to access pornography, to look at pornography on the internet. And without going into great detail, it became something that, um, because it helped me not feel the pain, and I could almost remove myself into this fantasy world where I didn't feel that pain. It was kind of the same effect as alcohol was. And the thing with a computer, as we know, we can close it and it's like it doesn't even exist. And then we can open it the next night, late at night, and there it is. And we close it. And it can be very repetitive. And it got to be um, a very it became very familiar in that a cycle of addiction had begun. And the longer that I was accessing pornography, just like the longer I drank alcohol, the more it became a friend because I could always count on it being there, you know? And the problem with it is there are multitudes of problems. First of all, if you're attending to pornography, you're not attending to your family and things that are much more worthy of your time. If you're accessing pornography, you actually are victimizing the people who are forced into pornography. And I really didn't understand that. I was so selfish. All I was thinking about is how it made me feel better. But I learned later on that it's simple supply and demand. It's like anything. Pornography's supply and demand like anything. And I learned that, and boy, that was horrible when I learned that I was actually I was ruining lives because I was increasing the amount of people that would have to be in that awful business. Um, it was against anything that I was taught wrong and right. It was against my morals. It was against my anything that I knew to be true about marriage. It was so wrong in so many ways, but it became my friend. And I'm gonna I'm gonna I'm gonna move forward 6 years. And so I had on and off used the computer for this for 6 years. And I think this is a bit of a miracle. But one night when I was in a chat room, um, playing out a fantasy, if you would, like you do in a chat room, and you're typing out to another person or persons. At the end of that chat room, someone in that room called the authorities at a national level. They called the authorities on me and said that I had said some things in there that maybe made them think that I was actually going to do these things that I was talking about. And so the authorities began to monitor my computer. I had no idea. And about 5 years later, I was actually at work in my office watching my TV, watching videotape of a basketball game that I was helping prepare our team for. I'm in my office all by myself, and two federal agents walked in my office and told me why they were there and said they had been monitoring my computer for about 5 years. and they thought that there were some activities and some things, some images that were illegal and had crossed state lines, and because of that it became a federal charge, and they were federal agents. And something happened to me in the moment that I never would have anticipated. And if you told me it happened to you, or anybody else told me this happened, I would be like, well, I'm sure it did, but that sounds awful dramatic. This is exactly what happened to me. Number one, I felt like a lightning bolt. I felt like being struck like a lightning bolt, something really warm and hot. And I could feel it in my heart, because I knew that I was in trouble. I knew I was going to be in trouble legally. And I couldn't think of all the ramifications, but I knew I could lose my job, maybe forever. I might have to serve time. I might have to go to prison. I might have to do this or that. I didn't know. I was they caught me off guard. I was kind of in shock. But and this is even more miraculous. At the same time, I felt like this huge ocean of water wash over me from head to toe. These two feelings happened at the same time in this body, and I didn't know what to make of it. I had never felt anything like that. What I loved about it was the freedom of the water washing over me, because I no longer had to live a secret life and not tell anybody what I was doing when I knew what I was doing was wrong. And it felt so good. On one hand, it felt good. And on the other hand, I was scared to death of what might happen. Well, what happened was, I gave myself to the authorities, and I told them everything they needed to know. And instead of getting an attorney and fighting it and trying to get off, which maybe I could have, maybe I could, I don't know. Um, I gave them everything that they wanted, because I was ready for it to be done. I was ready. I was ready for living this lie to be done. And I used the term, it felt like I was dragging around a dead man wherever I went, because half of me was dead. It really was. I wanted to be the half that was alive. And fortunately, the end of the story is that I was restored, and there was redemption, and I was forgiven, and I am whole. And that part of me that was dead, was regenerated to something that was living. And it's very biblical, but it's true of what happened. But like I said before, it had really complicated my life. And here I have a family, a wife that has been so supportive, and it was betrayal to her, certainly. And the whole process of being convicted and then having to go do a 2-year sentence in federal prison it's like nothing you ever dream was ever going to happen to you. But what was I going to do? I was going to put my best foot forward, and I was going to use that opportunity to become a better person, because when I came home, I wanted to be the best person I could possibly be, because I didn't know what my plans were. I just knew there were some big plans out there for me, but I didn't know what it was yet. And that's where the story turns good, right? In the end.
Randy, when you mentioned that you were happy that at least now I don't have to live a secret life, because I've worked constantly with people with chronic anxiety, PTSD, somebody who has lost their loved ones,
Right.
orphans. I see this quite common. First, they get in the why loop and they lose that hope, and a lot of them choose to carry the dead weight rather than the part that is alive.
Yes.
Oh. So, if you have to give a message to them, what would the tip be so that they can actually have? I'm sure they are already inspired by listening to your story, but many times we say, "Oh, this happened to him, but I cannot do that. I am not that lucky, or I cannot have it." So, what would be your message to them so that they can also pick themselves up and make that choice? Like you made a better choice. I want to be a better person after this prison.
Okay. Number one, as clear as I can say this, it's possible. People that are in that dark place for whatever's happened, and whatever the level of PTSD, whatever the level of darkness that they're in, the hole that they're in, when you say it's no longer possible to have a good life, it pretty much is over. So I want to be really clear with people. It's possible. It's like a flame that never goes out. That flame is always burning. You can put it over here and say, no, I can't see it, so it must not have exist. It's not possible for me to have this full whole life. Well, you're kidding yourself, first of all, because it never goes out. Never, ever goes out. Mm-mm. I don't care what happens. Second of all, we owe it to the people who love us, who care for us, who we have relationships with. Nobody wants to see a friend give up. Nobody. And now here's the tricky part of adversity along with addiction, either separately or together, let's say. Here's the tricky part. If we don't seek out help, we can convince ourselves that it's not possible to have a great life. We can. We can tell ourselves enough lies. There can be enough self deception that we believe it. And there's a reason that people don't seek out help, because they know that they're just going to come to us and save us and tell us there is hope and smile and all that stuff we don't want to do. So they avoid that. It's a very conscious decision. And we owe it to those people. You know, I I kind of get a kick out of people saying it's too bad we can't see our own funeral, because like it isn't like 400 people are going to call us today and tell us how much they love us, and if we were gone, how much they would miss us, like they do at a funeral, right? I, that's kind of an interesting thought, really. But what happens is what people do is they just assume nobody loves them and nobody would be at their funeral. When in fact that's not true. That's not true. And boy, I just hope people will reach out. They don't even have to say anything. If they go see a trusted friend, knock on the door, I promise you that they'll be in tears by the time their friend comes to the door. And all they have to do then is hug their friend, and their friend will know, oh, it's time to help. And let's get our other friends here and let's figure out a game plan to help this person through this addiction or through this PTSD or whatever the case. The the results can be pretty bad, pretty traumatic if we try to do this on our own. So I would say primarily those two things. And I'm going to give our the folks that are listening just a quick little a picture of what this looks like. If you've given up and you're at your bottom, people at their bottom will give up. And if they try to change their life by themselves, most of the time they're not going to make it out of this deep, dark pit in the ground, their bottom, that is dark as dark ever gets. But if they reach for help, one person, you don't have to get up in front of your church or out in front of your town and make a big speech. All you have to do is contact one person you have a friendship or relationship with and tell them what's going on. And it can be the same as being in that pit and having somebody drop a ladder all the way down to you, and you climb out of there in 10 seconds and your life changes forever. Remember what we said at the beginning? Life is choice. We're going to try to do this by ourselves, or we're going to reach out to friends. And that's a choice that we can make. There's the other choice we can make is knowing that hope is possible or hope is not possible. That's just a choice. That's all that is. Just a choice. So I really want to bring encouragement to people. I really want them to understand that. And you may say, no, I've never been in a place that with that bottom, with that darkness and that deep. Oh, that's great. You know people who have, and you haven't recognized it. There are people maybe that you did recognize and you didn't reach out. So it isn't all just about us now. It's about others that are around us because everybody needs to know that there's hope. So I hope that helps you with your question.
Absolutely. One thing that is happening is people often reach out to their loved ones with the problems, but they feel misunderstood.
Yes.
Somewhere, I would like to add on here that sometimes your family members, no matter how much they love you, they might not be able to understand your pain. And when you said seek support, I think that's wonderfully said, because maybe you seek support from a professional who knows how to help you out.
Yes.
Don't give up because your family judged you wrong or your friends were not able to understand your pain, because the more you close yourself up, I think the more difficult it will be to just stick there and get out. So if you talk to your friends and nothing is working, get out and seek someone who is a professional and they can help you pull you out.
Yes.
Then I think go into addictions, and easier said than done. But if you just take that support from someone who knows where to put the ladder, maybe you'll be able to get out much faster.
I'm so glad you said that because probably a lot of times a person will think so badly of themselves because everybody else looks down upon them and judges them or says, what a loser, or what a drunk, or look at that guy. He's homeless. He's this, he's that. The great thing about getting someone who's trained to do this work is there's no judgment. Could you imagine being judged your whole life and then all of a sudden at the end of your rope and you're ready to give up on life and you come across a professional, someone who can help you and they have no judgment whatsoever? That's enough to change a life completely around. So I'm so glad you said that.
Absolutely, because it actually changed my life as well. Like all of
Right.
us have faced that judgment. We were judged for everything we said, we did. So when you took that help, when you take that help from someone who doesn't judge you, that I think that is it in itself a big therapy, or you can say medicine that can take you out.
Yeah.
And Randy, you mentioned your story beautifully on how you rebounded it, and in so if you have to tell people, I listened heard about your 5 hours. So what would be those 5 hours you would like to share with people
Yeah.
so that they can rebound and they can move forward in their life?
Yeah. So there's kind of two parts of this. Number one is the decision of I'm going to give up, And then there's kind of a middle decision of, okay, I'll get up, I'll rebound, but I'm not going to smile the rest of my life. And life's going to be crappy the rest of my life. And they just don't, it's like they don't have any spirit in them. They're just existing. Some people give up and leave this, just end their life. Some just exist, but there's a third choice, and that's to rebound, get up, and then move forward and know there's a better, greater life ahead of them. And everybody can do that. So, first, they have to make a decision. Secondly, if you've decided to and you want to fully rebound forward, what I did, I went back through my whole story that you've now heard, and I asked myself, how did I do it? How did I do it? How am I still here? And when I did that, I started to write. I journaled and I journaled and I journaled, and I really wanted to know. And and the first two words started with R, and so I thought I'd make five words start with R. And these are all levels that I went through, and this is the reason that I'm here today. And the first one is reflection. We need to reflect on previous situations in our life that we didn't handle well. Previous situations in our life that maybe we did handle well. Because every time we meet adversity in life, okay, we can make the right decision. I call right decision making like lifting weights in the gym. You just get stronger. And the next time you run into some, let's say you lose your job, you walk in the office and they pull you in there and they fire you and you lose your job. Well, it doesn't feel good. It's tough. It's adversity. It stinks. Well, this decision making time, you want to rebound forward. It's just like you just exercise that weight. You just lift that weight, and you every time you get to where there's an obstacle, it's easier to do the right thing because you have trained yourself to do that. So I think it's great to reflect and think back about previous choices that you've made have been good and not so good. The second one is respond. When we react, we tend to do the wrong thing. We're too rash. We're too quick. We do it in anger. And we don't really think about all the factors. When we respond, we step back, take time, take a deep breath, talk to friends, talk to professionals. And by responding, we almost always do the right thing. It's just such a powerful skill. It's a life skill that we can get better at the more we use it. We need to reflect and we need to respond properly. And the third part is to reinvent. We might have to do some things different in our life. We might have to begin to think differently. We might we might have to even take on a different profession, different work. We might have to reinvent ourselves that way. I did. I could no longer be the coach. We may have to reinvent the kind of people that we're going to spend time with. That's usually a big one. So, reinvent our tribe, if you want to call it that, the people that we hang around with, because you know it needs to be in an enriching, supportive kind of group of people. So in a lot of different ways, we may need to change the alignment on our life, and we do that by reinventing. That's the third. The fourth is just awesome because it's redemption, and redemption comes from first accepting what's been done, asking for forgiveness for the people that you've hurt, and truly wanting a second chance. Now, we were talking before about like sometimes when you go to your family and if you continue to just do the wrong thing and say it'll never happen again, do the wrong thing and then do the wrong thing, they're going to say, no, you keep saying that. We can't trust you anymore. We need to ask for that second chance, and we need to make sure that we can do a good job with our second chance. So part of redemption is always asking for forgiveness, hoping people give it to you, but some people may not. And we understand that that's got to be okay. Okay. Just because we ask for it doesn't mean we're going to get it. But the most important thing we can do in redemption is to love, trust, and forgive ourselves. That's been a hard one for me, admittedly. Everybody else forgave me. God forgave me. I got a second chance, but I'm hard on myself. Why am I doing that? I don't know. I have to work on it every day, including today. So I do. It's just, I'm getting better. I've got much better at it, but I still have a long way to go. So redemption is you just put the lid on redemption, I think, if you learn how to love and support and nourish and forgive yourself. And the last of the five is reward. Reward, if you see me right now, I'm pointing at you. As you see me point at you, the guy you're looking at is in reward. I'm in reward time of my life. This is a part of my life I never thought I would live, to where I would actually be speaking, writing, and coaching people and being on podcasts with other like-minded, heart-centered people. And our sole intention is to help other people improve their life. And by telling them what we've done in our life, they might not make that same error or same, poor decision. I couldn't have told you before that this would be a season of my life that I would be living through. But lo and behold, this is my reward. And I really believe that I'm called to do this. I think this is my purpose. And I know that I have two girls in heaven and two on earth that are proud of their dad because this is the work that he's doing. And I say that's so heartfelt.
Absolutely.
And sometimes it's hard to say that. It can be pretty emotional, but oh boy. And I didn't come up with that. Somebody else told me that this was going to be part of my legacy, that I was actually going to, all the pain and all the sorrow and all the grief that we've had to endure, that it's going to be part of my girls' legacy, that their dad got to help the world a little bit by what he did. And that means everything.
Absolutely. I'm sure they must be very proud of you and the way you have shared your story with all honesty and vulnerability. And I'm sure it is going to inspire a lot of people, because people don't have hope. That is one thing I find it difficult to help them with that hope. But have hope, have some goals. It's okay what happened in your past. The future is not defined by your past.
It's not. No. From getting together and being on this podcast, because I can tell your audience one thing, that this isn't this can go deeper than a podcast, because you're going to have my contact information, and I would love nothing more than to hear from listeners. And it's such a thrill to get an email, or even because you'll have my direct phone number too. Okay. I'll make sure that you have it. And I can just tell, and I'm just going to say this right now, that if somebody wants to go a level deeper than just listening to this, then I'd love to communicate with you. The one who you heard the story from, and we could go deeper. And I would love to do that. And I want your listeners to feel comfortable to contact you and to request that information. And I'd love to hear from them, because if I could just help one person just remain hopeful. Wow. That's just, you can't put a price tag on that. Life's priceless, right? I mean, so that's my promise. I will do that.
Absolutely, Randy. I'll be sharing your contact information in the description box of
Great.
podcast or the YouTube channel, wherever people are watching. They can surely connect with you. And like you said, you are a coach and a mentor. I would be very happy if some of you who are actually seeking support, please connect with Randy and get the support. Don't fight everything alone. Don't stay in that den. Get out and just
Yes.
find your hope. I'll be sharing all your connection details that you have shared with me. I'll be sharing it with them. And if any one of you have any questions, please put it in the comment box so that we know that you have a question and we can answer you. We can help you out further. And thank you so much, Randy, for your time, for sharing such a beautiful story, being here with all your heart and being vulnerable. I really appreciate that. And even I was having goosebumps as you were sharing that story. Honestly, I think it's a wonderful story of hope and love. So friends, please let us know, did you like the session, did you like this podcast, what are your comments, what did you learn, what is something you're going to apply in your life. Let us know so that we are also inspired to bring in more experts for you to help you more. And I'll see you next week with another amazing expert. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you have not done it till now. And I'll see you next week. Keep smiling and keep shining. It's me, Pratishtha. Thank you.